folks. Welcome to the latest episode of The Android Show, your home for the latest Android developer news. I'm Simona Milanovic, a developer relations engineer on the Android team at Google.
And I'm Alejandra Stamato, Android developer at HubSpot. You know, Sim, when you said to meet you on the river, I didn't think you met on the river.
What better way to get into the London mood than on a boat on the Thames?
You know, I totally mispronounced Thames before I lived here.
It's okay. It's all water under the bridge. Anyway, for this latest episode of The Android Show, we've got a special treat. This time, we've got the team live here in London at Droidcon, ready to walk you through the latest in Android, including live demos and more. All coming up later in the show. I'm surprised you could join me. Don't you have major deadlines at work?
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm in the middle of a ton of refactors and improvements to our app. It's a lot of work.
So shouldn't you be writing code?
Oh, yeah, it's all under control. Yeah.
It is? How?
One word. Gemini.
Right, Gemini is a thing, but what does that have to do with you being available for the show?
Everything. When I heard there was gonna be a launch for Gemini in Android Studio, I assumed that the new features would enable Gemini to help me with all of my dev work, documentation, coding. Plus, I really hope it will also attend all of my meetings for me.
Sure. Well, for the details, you'll have to stay tuned for later in the show when we take the lid off the biggest set of updates to Gemini in Android Studio since it launched. For the stuff it can do, what would you do with all that extra time?
Oh, that's easy. I probably write more codes. Also, I would like to attend Droidcon London.
Great, because that's where we're headed. In just a little bit, we're going to see live demos from the team. Plus, we've gathered experts from across Android to answer your hashtag AskAndroid questions live. There's still time to get your questions in. Just use hashtag AskAndroid on X or in the comments on YouTube.
Oh, cool. I have some questions.
Great. You can enter them on the small screen while we watch the next segment on large screens. Take a look, and right after this, we'll be live in London.
And we're ready for Tim?
Tim, FlipAClip, take one.
My name is Tim Masson, and I'm a lead software engineer and co-founder of FlipAClip. FlipAClip is a dynamic animation tool that enables anyone at any skill level to be able to create an engaging animated movie with intuitive tools and through a very supportive community. We initially launched as a phone app. In the end, we realized that the combination of the stylus and large screens were really the optimal way to use our app. The culmination of all of this was that we were able to see an increase in active tablet users in the US by about 54%. We really realized that our drawing experience, and particularly our brushes, really needed to kind of take a next level. And so we built from the ground up a drawing engine that could take advantage of any input like styluses, take advantage of tilt and orientation and pressure sensitivity, and really optimize it, making sure the drawing experience was smooth and had low latency. The way that we did this was to do some GPU optimizations using some of the NDK features and really improve the performance of our drawing engine and really get the best experience with low latency and smoothness and just everything really working the best that it could. The Android platform is really powerful and enjoyable to use. You can really take advantage of the latest features and make sure that all of your users will have those enhancements without having to update their OS version. You are building the app for your users, so you really should try to make it as enjoyable for them and stress-free and smooth as possible. All this effort really paid off. We were able to see a lot of improvements. We saw stability improve by about 15%. We saw App Store ratings for Chromebooks improve about 15% and tablets 5%. One of the most invaluable tools to really help us improve the performance was the Play Console. The Play Console gives you a lot of different things with crash reports, even seeing comparisons with how other apps that are similar to yours are doing. And so you can really compare and see which areas you're doing really good at and some other areas that you might be needing to improve on. Not only that, but we were able to really identify the devices where performance was really lacking and really look at the crash reports and ANR, try to pinpoint what was keeping the drawing from being buttery smooth and just working really well. This was just a really great way to be able to improve the overall app. It might sound a little cliche, but really pay attention to what your users are saying. Specifically, pay attention to their reviews and reports and stability metrics. It really is about the users, because ultimately, if they're happy, they're going to tell their friends and they're going to come back, and organically your app is going to grow.
Well, hello, I'm Matthew, and I lead Android developer experience at Google. Our team builds the APIs and tools that you use to create amazing Android apps. Today, we want to cover two key areas. First, how Android's ecosystem offers new growth for your business. And second, how we're making development easier and more cost-effective with powerful tools enhanced by Google AI. The new growth areas that we want to talk about start with the fact that Android is the world's most popular operating system, powering over 3 billion devices worldwide. This incredible reach is a testament to the thriving Android ecosystem. That includes the flourishing community of app developers like you, who've embraced Android's open platform to create a world of possibilities for users everywhere. Consumers, especially in the premium segment, they don't just buy a phone anymore. They buy into a whole ecosystem of devices. And to support that, the experiences that you build should seamlessly follow your users across the many screens that they own. These users are more valuable. They're using more expensive devices. They're engaging in your app longer. And whether it's a phone, a tablet, a Chrome OS laptop, your car, TV, or watch, Android provides ways to build seamless experiences across these devices so that users can take advantage of this portfolio of screens. Let's dive into two of these specifically. First, large screens, and then wearables. There are now over 300 million Android large screen devices in use, and this includes foldables and tablets and even Chrome OS devices. Even more exciting is the forecast that over 100 million foldable smartphones will be shipped by 2027. Device makers are pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and that's most evident in this world of foldables. This past summer, Samsung released their new devices in this category, the Z Fold 6 and the Z Flip 6. And at Google, we released our own, the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. We're investing in platform features to enhance how people interact with these devices, like developer previews of desktop windowing. We've been working on this feature in partnership with Samsung as we jointly optimize these large screens for productivity. This momentum is proof that we've gone all in on this form factor, and that you should too. They're an immersive canvas for people to dive into your apps. We've seen that using a tablet, a flip, or a foldable increases user app spend by 20%. And it leads to higher engagement. Zoom, for instance, Zoom users spend approximately twice as many minutes connecting on tablets versus phones. And it's never been easier to build for large screens, with our Compose APIs and with Android Studio having been designed specifically for building adaptive UIs. Now, let's shift to talking about wearables. This summer, you also saw new watches from Samsung, Google, and others. And it's another form factor where we're seeing really significant engagement. Wear OS grew its user base by over 40% in 2023, and it has users in over 160 countries and regions. AllTrails is a great example. They gained more than 1 million new downloads after implementing a Wear OS app. Earlier this year, we released Wear OS 5, the newest version of our smartwatch platform. And this update enhances battery life and performance. It improves the watch face format. It expands health services with additional running data. And we're already seeing apps built on top of it. We're always looking for new ways to bring innovation across our ecosystem of partners and developers to users. And to help Android roll out polished features faster, we've got a bit of news to share. So let's play a video.
In the early days of Android, people would sometimes get frustrated not knowing when the big platform updates that Google announces each year would roll out to the rest of the ecosystem. That Android devices could be slow to update, but in reality, it's never been so simple as that. There are a number of ways Android gets updated, from the apps we use to the platform releases to the devices themselves. There is a lot more to this story, and so when the Android team told me that they were about to unveil a big change that will continue this evolution, I was immediately intrigued and I wanted to learn more. I started by talking to Matthew, the Vice President of Product Management on the Android developer team, to share with me what this big update actually is.
Android will be moving to more frequent SDK releases, with 2 planned for next year. These releases will help to drive faster innovation in apps and devices with higher stability and polish for users and developers. We'll have a major release in Q2 2025 and a minor release in Q4 2025, both of which will include new developer APIs. Minor SDK releases are new to Android, and they're there to introduce new APIs and functionality without having changes in behavior.
Wow, more frequent releases is a big deal. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that means for my release calendar as a dev?
Sure. We're moving the next major release forward to Q2 to more closely align with the schedules of major Android OEMs, which is 3 months earlier than in previous years. This means you can expect more devices to get the latest major release of Android in 2025. To help you get started, we'll begin the Q2 major release developer preview and beta program in just a few weeks.
This news got me thinking about how much computing has changed since the early days of mobile and how platforms can adapt to help push features out faster to users. For instance, you shouldn't have to update your entire OS to get a new feature on your calculator. Curious to learn more and eager for the technical background behind this news, I reached out to Justin Ho, a technical program manager and a deep expert in Android's development process, to break down this change.
In the past, software development was a bit like constructing a house. You'd start with a foundation, build the rest of the house on top, then maybe do some small fixes or renovations occasionally. This meant major innovations were delivered in infrequent releases, sometimes years apart. But the pace of mobile is much faster. Imagine instead that you're constantly updating this house with a new kitchen, an updated living room, or maybe a new door, but you can't actually move in until everything is finished. We struggle to get a good set of features all ready at the same time at a good quality level. With this new development style for Android, we have an easy way to swap in new rooms when they're ready. Larger renovations can remain hidden, take the time they need and be done right, then delivered when we're happy with the quality, all without affecting other parts of the house.
Next, I wanted to understand a bit more about how this news fits into Android's broader work on making the platform easier to update.
Android's update system is designed in layers, with 3 primary ones to consider: the apps you use, the Android OS framework itself, and the hardware-specific drivers that vary across devices. To deliver updates swiftly, we first focused on migrating features to apps like Gmail, YouTube, and Maps, which are regularly updated through the Play Store. This enables devices to easily and quickly gain new capabilities just by downloading new apps, and we've been updating even core functionalities like calling and messaging on many Android phones.
Cool, like how we send updates for our app to our users via Play. Makes sense.
Our next advancement, Project Trouble, introduced a clear separation between the Android OS framework and device-specific drivers. This modular approach empowers Android manufacturers to update devices with new OS versions without lengthy driver modifications, significantly accelerating the rollout of Android updates. More recently, Project Mainline further enhanced our update strategy. By packaging core OS components, such as the virtual machine, into modules that can be updated through the Play Store, we can deliver performance and security improvements with an agility comparable to app updates. This approach bypasses the traditional reliance on individual device makers, leading to faster and more consistent updates across the Android ecosystem.
After hearing that, it got me thinking, what do I need to do now with this change in Android? Again, here's Matthew to help us out.
So with the major platform release coming up in Q2, you'll need to make a little adjustment to the schedule you might have used in past years. You'll need to do your annual compatibility testing a few months earlier than in previous years to make sure your apps are ready for this Q2 release. You want to make sure to test your builds as soon as SDKs for the next major release are ready, as the changes involved in adding a minor release type will require some build systems to adapt. And make sure that you're compiling your apps against the new major SDK releases and use automation when possible to identify potential issues. Meta did this, improving their target SDK adoption velocity by 4 times across their portfolio of apps. This helped them seamlessly adopt new platform features, and when the SDK release rolled out to users, Meta's apps were ready. This created an absolutely great user experience.
To learn more, follow the link below.
Hi, I'm Clara Bellarri, the engineering lead for Compose at Google. Now that we talked about the business impact of the growth areas for Android, I want to talk to you about how we're making it even easier to build, reducing the cost of development. Jetpack Compose, our modern UI toolkit, makes it faster and easier for you to build beautiful UIs across form factors, saving you time and resources. SoundCloud is a great example here. They took their app to large screens and wearables using Compose. And they now tell us, and thanks to that, they're able to deliver new features using 45% less code on average. Or SAP, who use the new Compose Material Adaptive Library to adapt their app's navigation UI to different window sizes. They're now switching between a bottom navigation bar on small screens and a vertical navigation rail on larger ones. And the best thing they told us is that this only took 5 minutes to implement. This new library also provides easy-to-use, out-of-the-box layouts for list detail and supporting pane, making it really easy for you to adapt your app to the larger screen with minimal effort. Compose is now used and loved by 42% of the top 1,000 apps on the Play Store, and we continue to ship new features with every release. We know that your users love delightful experiences, especially the ones brought by nice, smooth animations. And so in the latest release of Compose, we've added support for animations of sharing content between different screens, and a single one-liner so that you can animate the insertion and deletion of items in a list. Let's look at some of these things in action. Here I have a checkout of Jetcaster, which is one of our core Compose samples. You can find it on GitHub, or you can import it directly into Studio. Jetcaster is the best sample to look at for form factor support, because as you can see, we already have TV and Wear support built in. Today, though, we're going to dive into the mobile module, and that includes all the code for phone, tablets, and everything in between. If we dive into the home screen, we see that I'm already using the supporting pane scaffold, which is part of the Compose Material Adaptive Library I just mentioned. This means that we've implemented large screen layouts really easily. Let me make some space, and I'll pull up Resizable Emulator to show you. Resizable Emulator allows me to see my app on phone, but also very easily switch between phone, foldable, and tablet. So I'm going to click on tablet. There you go. And you'll be able to see that, for example, if I click on one of these podcasts, the details screen is showing up in a supporting pane, thanks to the supporting pane scaffold. But if I then move back to phone, you can see that it's now 2 separate screens. And all of this is done for me. One interesting part of Jetcaster, as I click around, I really wish there were more animations between screens. But as I said earlier, we have a bunch of new shared element transition APIs in the latest release of Compose that I can use. So how about we implement this shared element transition between this little thumbnail down here and the player screen? Let's see. First of all, I'll go to the root of my Compose hierarchy, which is in the Jetcaster app component. And if I lost my point. Give me a second. Shared element, where are you? There you go. As you can see, I've already added a shared transition layout. This is the root of my shared element transitions, and it provides me a shared transition scope that I'm just going to pass down with the composition local so I can reach for it later, much deeper in the hierarchy. This layout is very important because it's going to coordinate the shared element transitions for me. It's going to set up an overlay that allows me to pull out items and move them around. And so that's why we have to put it at the very root of the hierarchy. Now for the actual shared element transition. Well, I'm going to find this component in the list, and that's going to be here in podcast category, where I have a lazy list scope that I'm filling with all of these items that you see, which are episode list items. The first thing I do is I wrap it in that shared transition scope that I passed down earlier, and it's simply I add a shared element modifier. You'll see I cheated and configured a couple things here. So for example, I made sure the clipping is correct when we're in the overlay, but it is a simple modifier. That's one side of the animation. Then for the other, I'm going to go to the player screen because I'm looking for this large image at the top of the player screen, which happens to be this player image I have here. Again, I'm wrapping it in the shared transition scope that we passed down earlier, and I'm going to do the same. Just add the shared element modifier, that one. Now live edit kicked in, and you see we have a beautiful shared element transition with minimal effort. The other thing I mentioned earlier that we'd add that I'm a huge fan of is the animations for adding and removing items from a list. Well, we have this beautiful list here, and you can see that I've already wrapped these items in a swipe to dismiss box, which gives us this deletion icon. But when I swipe it away, it just like junks and jumps. Well, funny enough, if I go back to podcast category, a simple .animate item and live edit kicking in is going to animate my list. We continue to improve Compose every release. We have a huge focus on quality and polish. In the faster releases, we've shipped major improvements to performance across the board, and we continue to really focus on performance because we want to make sure that your app's UI is as smooth as possible out of the box. Now, Compose is excellent for building beautiful UIs across multiple devices, but what if you want to share code across multiple platforms? Well, then we move on to Kotlin multiplatform, developed by JetBrains, which enables exactly this. We've seen the most value in reducing duplicated code for business logic. So after making a couple of steps in the last few years, earlier this year, we announced official support for Kotlin multiplatform for shared business logic across Android and iOS. At Google, we've been migrating the Workspace apps, starting with the Google Docs app, to make use of KMP for shared business logic across Android, iOS, and web. And in the community, there are a growing number of apps that are using KMP. But it's not just apps. We've seen a 30% increase in the number of KMP libraries that have been developed this year. To make it easier for you to leverage KMP in your apps, we work with JetBrains and the developer community to bring KMP to our Jetpack libraries. There's two levels of support that you should understand: KMP compatibility and KMP support. KMP compatibility means we've removed all of the Android dependencies from the library so that it can be used in the common source set of a KMP project. But you may still need to do some work to integrate that library into other platforms. Lifecycle, viewModel, and paging are KMP-compatible libraries. In some cases, we've taken it a step further to offer KMP support out of the box for Android and iOS. Room, data store, and collections are all KMP support libraries. We've also added a KMP template to Android Studio so you can easily add a shared KMP module to your existing Android app and start sharing business logic across platforms. We're excited about the future of KMP, and we can't wait to hear how it accelerates your app's development. Now let me invite Tor on stage to talk about Android Studio and AI, power charging your workflow.
All right. Hello, everybody. A key strength of Android is that it's available in many shapes and sizes. But that can make it challenging to make sure that your app works well across all those configurations. And Clara just showed you the resizable emulator to check for different form factors. And now I want to show you how to use a new feature called device settings to check for user preferences, things like font size, app language, and light theme and dark theme. So when I'm running my app in Studio, whether it's the emulator or streaming a physical device, I can pull up the device shortcuts dialog. And here, with a single click, I can put the phone into dark mode to make sure that it works correctly. I can also switch languages really quickly, although that's not very interesting in this app because it's just untranslated podcast feeds. But I can also go and change the font size and display size on the phone. So if I, for example, drag the slider all the way to the right, I can now see that this app is actually doing a pretty good job with large fonts. And I'm someone who actually uses large fonts on my phone, so I'd personally appreciate it if you'd all use this feature on your apps to make sure they work well for me. All right, let me reset. And I want to switch gears and talk about developer productivity. And a huge enabler for that in the last couple of years is, of course, AI. We can build features now that just wasn't possible before. And our initial focus is on features that are useful right now. And my first example is renaming support. So this is a composable function. I don't love the name. And so look what happens when I press Shift F6 now to rename. So you can see that I'm actually getting AI suggestions for better names based on what the code is actually doing. And we're using a small model to give you very quick results, and then a larger model to page in additional better results. And I really like this feature because, as we all know, naming is hard, and Gemini is pretty good at it, certainly better than me. And when I do choose something, we're still using the refactoring machinery in the IDE, so we make sure that the code is always updated correctly. All right, the next feature I want to show is code transformations. So here we're looking at a unit test, and you can see it's creating some sample data here. And so what I can do is ask Gemini with command / and say, add 10 more examples. So it's not going to change the file directly. We always show this as a diff, and I encourage you to look at the diff and make sure that it's correct. Often it is. As you can see here, it's figured out that it needs to increment the ID, for example, and it gives me some reasonable more sample data. And so I can now accept this. And this feature isn't just for transforming existing code. You can also use it to write new code. So here, for example, I'll insert a new line. Oh, and here you see the AI code completion. But I'll, again, ask Gemini, and I'll say add JUnit temporary folder. This is something I can never remember how to do in Kotlin. But Gemini knows how to do it. Yes. So here we get the magical incantation and the right imports, and I can just accept the changes again. So there's obviously tons of applications for this. Adding line comments, cleaning up code, rewriting error messages. I keep coming up with new use cases for this. So use your imagination. All right, so everything I've shown you so far is available in the Ladybug feature drop release. Now I want to show you something new that we're working on. This is very much in development, so things could go horribly wrong. But I think it's so cool, so I want to try it live. You seem friendly. Wish me luck. All right, so if you check out this project, Jetcaster, you'll notice that it doesn't have any integration tests. And that's perhaps not surprising, because writing espresso tests is hard, maintaining them is hard, and also not fun. And that's where we want to help. So our solution for this is tentatively called Journeys with Gemini. So what you're seeing here is a journey file. This file is a test. So it's an English list of instructions for the AI for how to drive through your app and for things to check along the way. I'm going to open up a slightly simpler one, and I'm going to hit run because it does take a little while. All right, so what this journey says is launch the app and then tap on the first episode. So that means the AI has to understand the structure of your UI and figure out what to tap. And then on the next screen, when the podcast is shown, it should tap on the play icon, and then it should verify that it switches to pause, the pause icon, right? That's the behavior we want, and this test is going to verify it. So behind the scenes here, you can see this journey is just an XML file, right? This is one you would check into version control. But we give you a graphical editor to sort of see it and edit it, which is nicer. So the test is almost done, I think. Another second or two. All right, so it passed. That's good. But as you all know, writing a passing test, very easy, right? An empty test is a passing test. So the trick is to make sure that this test actually fails when the app is broken. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to break this app. So I'll just go in, and I'll switch out the icons, and I'll hit run again. So what I did was I went to the place where we're normally alternating between the play and pause icons, and I just switched them to always be play. And so while that's running, think about how you would test this today with Espresso. How do you make sure that the right icon is showing? You could maybe look for the icon path or something, but what if someone checks in the wrong pixels, right? The wrong asset. And here, the AI is actually looking at your screen and interpreting it. And that's incredibly powerful. All right, so now it'll hopefully fail any second now. Holding my breath. Yes, all right, excellent. So we can see here the assertion is listed here from the test machinery. So to recap, we're working on a way to make it dramatically easier to write end-to-end tests. And I only had time to show you running journeys today, but we are, of course, also working on ways to make it easy to write these things. For example, a test recorder. So let's wrap up. We talked about how Android's ecosystem offers new growth for your apps, and how we're making it more cost-effective and easier to develop using powerful tools enhanced by Google AI. Stay tuned for the fireside chat, but first, let's take a look at how several developers built apps faster using Gemini and Android Studio. So let's roll the video.
Hi, my name is Lori, and I've been an Android developer for more than 15 years, since the beta. Gemini for Android Studio really accelerated my app development when it came to creative tweaks. I used to leave the IDE to go build custom color palettes, but now I can ask Gemini to give me a gradient in the style of the Northern Lights. When working with haptics, I can just ask Gemini for a custom waveform in the style of an engine revving, and it gives me a pretty good answer to that. By setting some coding standards and leveraging Gemini for Android Studio's ability to take my creative ideas and run with them, it has saved me hours of work and context switching and made rapid prototyping a lot more fun. My tips for developers trying Gemini for Android Studio are to set some ground rules up front for your coding standards, and then really try and get creative with how you work with Gemini for Android Studio.
Hi, I'm Shivangi, and I work for Suki AI. I had never developed for a Wear OS before. This was a new territory for me. That's where Gemini in Android Studio came in. I prompted with just one line of input, describing the UI I want in Jetpack Compose. And Gemini in Android Studio returned 5 working solutions. 5. It was like having a seasoned developer right by my side, guiding me through something I had never done before. What sets Gemini in Android Studio apart is its contextual problem solving. It acts like a knowledgeable teammate who understands my project structure and provides relevant code improvements, saving me days of documentation. Buy a tip for developers. If you're using Gemini in Android Studio, be clear with what you want, and it'll help you get there faster. Ask specific questions, and it'll generate useful code examples that enhance your skill through hands-on practice.
Hi, I'm Darshan. I've been an Android developer for 10 years. I use Gemini in Android Studio to simplify the legacy codebase, update the toolchain, and make the app runnable with the current version of Android. I was confident that my app has been updated properly and unit tests are working as expected. If it were not for Gemini in Android Studio, I estimate it would have taken me at least 1 month to get the app ready manually. My tip for developers using Gemini in Android Studio is to be specific with the prompts. Clearly state what you want Gemini to do, whether it's writing code, generating tests, debugging errors, or answering any technical questions. Gemini is a very powerful tool, where more detailed instructions lead to more accurate results.
Ale, what are you doing?
Oh, I'm planning more text features, animation, shaders, layouts, so much to do with my side project.
Do you have time for that?
Oh yeah, totally. Did you see all the updates for Gemini features in Android Studio? They're even better than I thought.
Are they?
Yeah, for example, the refactoring support is awesome, like generating meaningful class names, methods, variables.
Well, I'm glad you find it useful.
Well, it's more than useful, it's huge. Do you know how many meetings we waste bike sharing names and classes and stuff? Like naming is like the biggest waste of developer time. Well, except for arguing about application architecture. Now I can have Gemini name all of my things. And I wonder if I can have it argue with me too.
Don't remember arguing being on the feature list.
It'll help with every stage of the development, really. Coding, refactoring, adding comments, even writing my commit messages. I'm definitely going to have more time for my crazy text experiments.
Great, but first, it's almost time for our Ask Android Fireside Chat. We've assembled experts from across Android to answer your questions about Jetpack Compose, Android Studio, Android 15, Gemini, and form factors like wearables, large screens, and more. There's still time to get your question in and see if it's answered live. Just use hashtag AskAndroid on X or in the comments on YouTube.
Got it. Hashtag AskAndroid. How can I teleport over to Droidcon now?
I think I can help you with that. Okay, over to you all at Droidcon for our live Ask Android panel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. I'm Florina Montanesco, and I'm going to be your host and moderator for today. You've already met Matthew, Clara, and Tor, but also here with us we have...
Alex. Hi, I'm everyone. I'm Alex. That was a weird way to say that. I'm Alex. I'm working on large screens, foldables, tablets, Chrome OS, and cars, and more things, so many things. Yeah.
Hi, and I'm Katerina. I'm working on AI on Android, so happy to answer your AI questions.
And I'm Rebecca. I work on the Android platform, so asking all things Android 15, as well as building adaptive layouts with Compose.
Cool. Please ask your questions on social or on the YouTube live chat. We already have a couple, so let's get started. The first one is for Clara. With the rise of Jetpack Compose, do you think XML-based layouts will eventually be phased out in Android development? What might this transition mean for developers accustomed to XML?
Hard one to begin with. Yeah, I mean, we are all full on Compose. Compose is what we believe is the best way to build Android UI. But obviously, there are a lot of apps out there built with XML layouts. And so we acknowledge that. And that's why we've spent a lot of effort from the very beginning on Introp. And we've really made sure that you can use Compose as little or as much as you want in your app together with the existing XML layouts. So in a way, they're not going away. But we do strongly believe that moving further and further into Compose is the way to really get more bang for your buck in what you're building, build higher quality apps, and it's really where we are focused on making the most improvements and shipping exciting new things. We're going to start shifting more and more that way.
And if I can add to that, when I think what this transition may mean to developers accustomed to XML, I'm hoping that, yes, indeed, they're going to learn something new, but that's going to make them ship things faster. So they're going to be able to focus on, their users, whatever features you need to build, well, you're going to be able to build those things faster. Next question. Why does Glance Widget API have so many limitations for designing UI when it will become ready to create fully functional widgets? Rebecca, I think this one's for you.
OK, so there's two parts to that question about functionality for widgets and then also about Glance, I think. So I'm interested in exactly the details that you think that are missing, but I think this year we've done a lot with Jetpack Glance. So Jetpack Glance 1.1 became stable this year, at which point we introduced functionality like being able to have better error handling, better loading states, zero states, as well as releasing canonical layouts to allow you to have better default, prettier widgets. Jetpack Glance is built on top of remote views, so I wonder whether that's what you're talking about in terms of limited functionality. So anything that remote views can do, Glance can do, but Glance can't do things that remote views can't do. If you do have specifics, though, you know my name. You can find me on Twitter or on LinkedIn, so please do share with me. But yeah, we do have new design guidance that's being published on how to do things like better interactions, better handling of background work, which I know has been a strong pain point for widget development. So hopefully, a lot of the things will be covered now with Jetpack Clouds 1.1. But yeah, if you have specifics, love to know.
I think in general, like I love these questions of like, oh, can the API do this or that? Because that tells us that, oh, maybe we missed a core user journey for you. So please create an issue on our issue tracker where we try to look at them and see which ones can become new features for our APIs and tools. Now a question about Gemini, and I think it means Gemini and Android Studio. Does using Gemini affect memory usage much?
Does using
Gemini, and I assume Gemini and Android Studio, yeah.
No. All the hard work is done in Google's data center, right? Like Studio doesn't do very much. If you went to the excellent talk by Seb and Chris this morning, you could hear that we're switching the whole implementation out to use Compose for desktop. That one is currently using more memory inherently, but we think it's the right move. And if you saw Roman's talk, you'd see how hard the Compose team works on reducing memory usage. So, yeah.
We'll stick it to with AI. I see all of these APIs for AI, like the Vertex SDK, Gemini SDK, Gemini Nano. When do I use which?
That's a good question, and definitely some of the developers a little bit confused. So Google has lots of capable models, and some of them cloud models, some of them on-device models. And if you think about cloud capabilities, we have Gemini Pro and Gemini Flash, our most powerful models. Flash mostly you can access if you optimize for speed, and Pro if you want to optimize for quality, or if you want to build some expertise in a certain domain. Pro definitely has more knowledge. But we would like you to start with Flash. And to access these powerful models on the cloud, you should use Vertex AI and Firebase. And it also has different SDKs, and there's an Android SDK. But there's also a mini version of these powerful models that we wanted to bring into devices, and it's called Gemini Nano. And right now, it's also available for experimental access, so check out our documentation and let us know if you like it and what's the feedback, and if you want to ship any features with Gemini Nano to leverage on-device capabilities.
Cool. We got a bunch of questions on Compose multi-platform, so rather than talking each of them, maybe, Clara, can you tell us more about Compose multi-platform?
Yeah, so Compose multi-platform is a product from JetBrains. Everyone knows Compose is an open source project, and from the very early days, JetBrains have been building Compose multi-platform on top of the offering that we have for Android. We work with them and enable them. It's not like something we do. It is a product by JetBrains.
And we're using it in Android Studio.
Yes.
The new UI.
We also got a couple of questions related to Gemini and Android Studio that are around privacy settings. So I'm just selecting one of them. Is the Gemini model running locally? What if we don't want to risk moving source for analysis outside of an organization's control?
So the question, is it running fully locally, right, basically? Yes, definitely. It runs only on the device. It doesn't use any cloud capabilities. That's why if you want to bring or develop any features that are mostly private, and you want to keep all users' data on the device, this is the right way to do it.
I'm not sure whether this question was for Gemini overall or for Gemini and Android Studio, and about using the code.
We've heard loud and clear the need for some sort of an enterprise offering. I'm sure we'll have something to announce at some point.
I'm happy to add to that. Gemini in Android Studio is gaining an enterprise capability with the same level of privacy and data promises that the cloud offering does have. So that is coming very soon.
Okay, cool. I wasn't aware that.
You're
excellent.
Yeah. I hope you were, because if you're not, we have extra work after
we were
the
working
show.
on it. I wasn't sure we could talk about it. I'm glad we could talk about it.
It's great. I get the excitement of sharing it. Tor gets the excitement of building it.
Seeing the platform changes from the video with Matthew, I'm not really sure what it means for us. Well, we need to update our app twice next year. Maybe, Rebecca, do you want to answer this one?
I can, and Matthew, feel free to...
Tag team?
No. I think is the short answer. So we have always had an annual dessert release, which we know and love, and that will still be the case next year. So next year there will be a major, what we're calling a major, but to some extent I would say it's like TMI. I think what we're trying to do is we've always been developing in the open. We want to bring you on this journey and help you understand how we are trying to continue delivering a very stable, high-quality platform and acknowledging that the platform itself also wants to be iterating faster and bringing new functionality quicker. That does not mean that you now need to be doing many platform upgrades every single year. So next year, one major release, that's the one that you really need to care about. The main caveat, I think, is just we are doing it a bit earlier. There will be a minor release next year, but that is entirely optional. That does not change the SDK int that you're very familiar with. And we actually have been doing quarterly releases. If for the keen beans that have been looking at AOSP, we actually have been doing quarterly releases for a while. And so really we're just kind of leaning more into that.
I think the only piece I would add is the Pixel QPRs, if you own or use a Pixel. I hope you do. You've already had a taste of this with the quarterly releases that we've done, and that's kind of been practice for us to get good at this. And what we're doing is effectively with the major and the minor release, bringing this out to the full ecosystem of OEMs. The major one, again, would be the one that has breaking changes, just to reemphasize what Bex told us. And the minor one is just additional, so it gives us a named place during the year to bring more capability rather than just waiting for the annual cycle, but that is a non-breaking and completely optional one to take. Bex, any final?
The thing that will be different as well now is there will actually be new APIs in those, what we're calling the minor releases. So if you did want to, we are now going to be creating a way for you actually to start accessing those. So you can actually, previously with QPRs, there was no difference. There was no like way an app could know which minor, although we weren't calling them minor releases previously, and so this will now give you the opportunity to kind of opt in. So you'll be able to be explicitly like, yep, I like the look of that API. I don't want to wait 12 months. I want to start playing around with that, and so we're now giving you that way, but by no means mandatory.
And Studio has full support for this. So if you use a new API, you get a lint warning with minor version, and it inserts all the right magic. Because nicely, it is not actually changing the logic of SDK. That stays to be a major int concept, so major version concept.
Coordinated amongst the whole group. That's great.
Yeah.
We got a couple of questions about different features of Compose. So I'll start with the first one is, why does Jetpack Compose doesn't have auto text sizing, and when will it be added?
Well, auto-sizing text was implemented by our intern this summer and was just finished, so it's going to be in the next Compose release.
Will there ever be a nested scroll view for Compose?
I'm curious on that one, because we support nested scrolling. And so we don't do views, but we can support nested scrolling. So if there are specific issues, please reach out to us in the issue tracker.
As we're talking about features, Clara, what's on the Compose roadmap?
Oh, hello, Roman.
Oh. I don't know if you got that, but the auto text sizing was shipped yesterday.
Hey, wait. Let me caveat that. Thank you, Roman. It was shipped yesterday in the latest alpha. It will be in the next major release of Compose. But yes, the APIs landed like a week ago.
Still worth the applause, though.
Thank you.
What else is on the roadmap?
What else? I mean, we shipped our last major release in September, and so in the background, like whenever we're shipping one stable release, we're already hard at work with the next. Exciting things that are currently already in development and landing for the next release. We have autofill support coming, which we know has been a big one that everyone's been asking for. We've also implemented visibility APIs. We heard this request very heavily from people who are implementing either impression tracking or like ads SDKs. They want to know the ad is actually visible. So there's a bunch of new visibility APIs that are being built. We've built this whole new infrastructure for knowing what's visible and what's including what else on the screen. So that's really exciting. And then I mean, a bunch of new performance things have landed very recently. We did major work to text. There's a whole change in how we've done the graphics layers for text that is seeing like major improvements across the board. I think those are top of mind, the biggest things I've seen land in the last month or two. Hopefully that makes you excited about the next release.
On the adaptive layouts front, we had the 1.0 release earlier this year, and we're already working on 1.1. Some new features that are coming there is pane expansion, being able to resize the different panes. You saw earlier the example of the supporting pane. Right now, that looks just static. It's like a fixed width, so we're working on making a way to resize that, as you would expect in any desktop environment where you have multiple things that you can resize. Other things in there is predictive back support for those, as well as being able to customize some of the motion as those different panes move around. So those are also in the works.
Are you doing anything else other than AI in Android Studio?
I'm so glad they just laughed and didn't clap.
Spicy.
Yeah, no, we spend most of our time on non-AI things. Just keeping up with all the platform changes is quite a bit of work, and keeping up with all the compose changes is quite a bit of work. And we have a bunch of new features. So you saw some of it today. On top of, for example, the device settings, we're integrating Lake Canary. We have a new profiling UI. We have the embedded layout inspector. Live edits, still active work for us. There's a very, very long list. And then we're working with Gradle to actually bring about declarative Gradle, which is going to make for better tooling support. And then we've heard you make builds faster. That's always a priority. So we spend a lot of time on that too. But I think working on AI is I actually believe that it's adding a lot of productivity for relatively low investment for us. We basically get to piggyback on thousands, tens of thousands of engineering hours in the rest of Google, right? And we just create a prompt, send it off to the data center, get the results back, and then we wrap them, right? This is really easy for us, and I think high value for developers. And I use the tooling myself. I think it's really good. So I turned that question into yay AI. But yeah, there's a lot of other work happening for sure.
So far, that was like the first personal endorsement of a capability, though. That's strong.
Yes.
The new journeys testing feature looks really exciting. Is it LLM-based? And if so, how do you avoid the dreaded hallucination problem? And in general, there's another question around consistency of test results.
Yes, it's LLM-based. It's Gemini. It's actually something that is, I would say, relatively easier. Sorry, partner team who's working on this. I'm sure it's super hard. But what it's doing is it's multimodal, right? So it's basically taking the screen and asking Gemini to understand these pixels and then breaking that down. And so for the AI to learn how to navigate an app probably isn't as hard as some of the other things that it's being asked to do, right? So the results are pretty good in what it can do. Obviously, if you word your journey really vaguely, it might have a harder time understanding your UI. But generally, I think basically taking text descriptions, understanding what to do, and we have lots and lots of training data for this, obviously, and we'd like more. But to me, it seems, again, as a layperson, kind of, doesn't seem like that hard of an AI problem.
Cool. How can we share a common Gemini model trained as per need among the various members of a team?
Sorry, could you repeat?
How can we share a common Gemini model trained as per need among the various members of a team?
Common Gemini model shared across different members of the team?
Yeah.
So I guess they mean accessing via the cloud, because on device, basically it's available on our flagship devices to everybody for testing. You don't need to have anything special. But if you want to access it via, let's say, server side, you definitely need to set up all of the configuration and have the API key and set up basically the Vertex AI in Firebase. Yeah, this is how you do it. Basically go through the steps, and if something is not clear, by the way, if the instructions are not clear or something doesn't work, also use the same thing as Bex recommended. Reach out to me on X or LinkedIn, and I would be happy to answer that question. Or if there is an issue that you're struggling with, I'm happy to help with fixing it as well.
As we talked about the roadmap, the next question is whether we have any plans or news for Jetpack Compose 2.0.
No. I mean, a bit of background. In general, with libraries, we try to avoid 2.0s because they're very disruptive. Because if you think of a library ecosystem, any library that's built on top of us has, we follow semantic versioning, and so there's a lot of assumptions made of you will be able to have a library that is versioned independently from us and still have Gradle resolve all your dependencies correctly. Us doing a 2.0 is breaking that. It's saying, OK, whatever we're building is not compatible with the past. We're starting over. And so any libraries that you've all developed already that depended on Compose 1 would suddenly have to be rewritten to be able to be used with Compose 2. And so that kind of ridiculously disruptive change would only come from a real need of there is something we really got wrong, or the landscape has changed, and we really need to start over. But we will really try to avoid doing that at any cost.
I feel like we talk a lot about future, so maybe this one is for you, Matthew. So we hear a lot about like AI and Gemini and Android Studio, and of course, Compose. What else are you planning to invest in when it comes to developer experience?
I think this will be our last question on timing, so yes. Perfect for this. Repeat it just one more time while I kind of think about the best answer.
So developers know about AI, Gemini and Android Studio, Compose. What else are you planning to invest in when it comes to developer experience?
On the developer experience front, I think of this as including giving you as much surface to work with as possible. So one of the things that I'd love to have more dollars, people, time to invest in is making sure more of the Jetpack library surface was compatible with KMP. Because I think it's two things that we've already said we've made a bet on. One, which is KMP for shared business logic. And two, making sure that Android-centric native applications are the way that we're empowering you to deliver value for your users and your business. We've made some progress through that. We've announced a couple of libraries that have that full support, but I think the more the better. I look to my left to see if anybody disagrees with this, but is there any edge to which you'd be dissatisfied? Like, how far should we go?
Yeah, I guess.
Lots of smiles, so take that as an endorsement. So as many libraries to be KMP compatible as possible.
Cool. That is all we had time for on the live stream. So thank you, everyone who asked questions. That was all from us, from the Android Show. Thanks for watching.
Hi, I'm Simona, and we've got a few recent Spotlight Weeks to recap you on. Our series where we shine a light on technical areas across Android development and equip you with the tools you need to take advantage of each area. The first up is Katerina from our AI on Android Spotlight Week, earlier this month.
Here are 3 things we will be talking about. Number 1. Gemini Nano is changing the game, bringing generative AI capabilities directly to your Android devices. This means faster AI experiences that keep your data private and secure. Number 2, we will show you how to experiment with your own AI models on Android devices. MediaPipe and LightRT give you the flexibility to deploy custom models on Android devices. And number 3, you will also learn how to access the latest versions of Gemini Pro and Gemini Flash models from your Android app by using Firebase.
That was AI on Android. Next, we have Miguel from our Adaptive Week. What do we cover, Miguel?
Here's a sneak peek at just 3 of the many things we'll be talking about. Number 1, adaptive layouts. Your app should work well no matter the device or configuration. Compose adaptive layouts help build common layouts that automatically transform as the window size changes. Number 2, Stylus and Ink API. Fluid drawing experiences for your app. Easy with the new Ink API. And number 3, user productivity. Run multiple apps and resize windows for optimal multitasking. Test your apps with desktop windowing now in developer preview.
And finally, it's the week that's closest to my heart, Passkeys Week, which is dropping in 2 weeks on November 18th. Here's John to tell us about 3 important updates.
Let's take a sneak peek at just 3 of the many things we'll be covering in Passkeys Spotlight Week. Number 1, learn from the best. Join our Ask Android Q&A with Google Auth and Identity experts to hear questions from the community and learn how to build an experience that takes your users from authentication to the main features of your app in just a snap. Number 2, simple intuitive code samples. Want to see how to use passkeys in Compose? Well, we've got just the sample for you. You'll be able to see it all in action. Our sample covers passkeys, credential manager, and everything else you'll need to craft a smooth integration. And number 3, passkeys are amazing, but don't just take our word for it. We'll show you developers from around the world, including everyday apps you know and use, and credential providers who couldn't be more excited to share their experiences.
Nice, can't wait for that one. And not long to wait. The Passkey Spotlight Week kicks off on November 18th, so be sure to tune in. See you there. Well, that about wraps it up for today. Wait, what are you doing now?
I'm checking for system updates. Did you hear the news about all of the more frequent platform releases?
Yeah, it's great. Twice yearly.
Oh, I heard twice daily.
But there's tons of other developer stuff to keep us busy all year long. Tune in to the Android Developer YouTube channel soon for Spotlight Weeks on AI and passkeys. And check in next quarter for the next Android show.
Meanwhile, we should get to Droidcon London to catch the rest of the conference ourselves. So set the course for Droidcon London, hoist the mainsail, full speed ahead.
This boat doesn't go there.
Ay, caramba! Okay, all ashore.
That's a wrap.